what's in a label, right? I've noticed quite often that people who identify as feminists will try to convince people who don't identify as feminists, or even as anti-feminist, or as egalitarian, or whatever, that they should adopt the label feminist based on the dictionary definition, which actually, the base dictionary definition, most of us agree on. And if the person is still combative and they still reject the label based on something we'll discuss in a moment, then the pronouncement will come out that, well, you are one whether you like it or not. As though somehow adding someone who's resistant to your cause and labeling is some sort of a coup, like that benefits you in some way. I guess they just think if they just keep adding numbers to this label that it's meaningful in some way, which obviously it isn't. Now, the people who detract from this idea are typically people who would identify as egalitarian, and the point that they will make is that there's a difference between the dictionary definition of feminist and the ways that modern feminists conduct themselves, and the ideology itself. The feminist theory is different from the dictionary definition, and that is the reason that they will not adopt the label. And I'd like to suggest a different approach. If we are going to utilize, which all feminists when pressed will utilize the dictionary definition despite their particular activities, their particular activism, if we are going to accept the base dictionary definition for feminists, the belief in the political, social, economic, etc., equality of women and men, assuming, of course, that that's talking about equality of treatment and equality of opportunity and not equality. Obviously, men and women aren't equal. I can't have any children. I'm barren. Oh, woe is me, I'm barren. I can father them, of course. But the belief that they should have equal treatment, and it's not about equality of outcome, as long as we're clear on that we're talking about a merit-based system where people are treated as individuals rather than as separate classes and treated differently based on those classes, then actually we're the feminists. And anyone who would go against that dictionary definition is an anti-feminist. So I think that actually clears things up quite nicely. I'm a feminist, and so can you. Well, all you have to do to be a feminist is, again, to agree in the equality of women and men vis-a-vis the treatment under law and in our culture and social and workplace and economic areas. And so that actually rejects a lot of people who would otherwise claim themselves to be feminists. Some of the most prominent ones, the Jessica Valentes, the Lacey Greens, and many, many others who would promote notions like affirmative action. See, if you're going to believe, and I would extend this, the egalitarian in me would extend this to races and other classifications of human beings. I adopt the Martin Luther King Jr. stance that people should be treated based on the content of who they are, not on the color of their skin, or their gender, or their socioeconomic status, their caste, what have you. That everyone should be treated as an individual. And I would say that the base dictionary definition of feminism agrees with this. So really what we're talking about is individual rights and freedoms. The moment you say that you cannot treat people differently based on gender or race or any of these other things, then what you are talking about is individual rights and freedoms. And any further attempt then to classify people based on gender, race, etc., is contrary to the notion of equality. So you cannot then have equality in your parliamentary cabinet. You cannot attempt to have gender equality in your Congress. You cannot attempt to have gender equality in business. And you really can't attempt to have gender equality in mining and roofing and road construction and forestry, etc., because those things are all contraventions of those things. Even if they're done in an attempt to change the balance, the current balance, which might be weighted in favor of one gender or another, But it's only actionable under feminism, under the dictionary definition of feminism, if it's due to a structural discrimination based on gender itself. If it's due to some basic biology, or if it's due to particular choices of different people, it's not actionable in terms of, again, affirmative action type policies. So when you have people like Lacey Green out there talking about, it's kind of interesting too, because of course they'll want to pull everyone in under the banner of feminist. You're a feminist. You believe in these basic equalities, then you are a feminist. They'll be very quick to throw people off the train if they speak too loudly about things in a way that's different. And so, for instance, you have Lacey Green complaining that Taylor Swift preaches a feminism that's not intersectional. You're not going to believe this. I had to pause the video because I forgot Anita Sarkeesian's name. It was kind of nice. I wish it would be permanent, but it wasn't. You've got Anita Sarkeesian preaching against choice feminism, which is the notion that anything that a woman does is a feminist act if she's exercising her own free will. Obviously, I'm assuming they mean outside of things that would be done, against another person, right? Or initiation of force or coercion or anything of that sort. The way she dresses, the way she carries herself, the type of career she pursues, etc., etc. And Anita Sarkeesian has gone against this. Specifically, the gendered notion that women should not do certain things based on how it might impact other women. The sexism. It's interesting, I've had this running joke with my wife recently. And anytime we watch television, watch commercials, or we just talk amongst ourselves, I've tried to be hyper aware of anything that might be sexist. Now, keep in mind, I'm not talking about anything that has to do with one of the genders. And, you have to separate things. You have to be able to determine if something is sexist based on if you would say that if the roles were reversed. If that person was the opposite gender, would that thing still be said, or was it done intentionally out of a sense of discrimination or out of a general sense that there's not a deserved equality between the sexes? So every time I see something or hear something that could be perceived as sexist, I just say it out loud. That's sexist. That's sexist. And the interesting thing about that is the most sexist things that I've noticed. Now, keep in mind, I'm watching a lot of feminist videos, but I'm also watching mainstream television and news reports and that sort of thing are coming out of the mouths of the people who declare themselves to be feminists. So I think we need to take the label back. I don't think we should reject the notion that we're feminists. I think we ought to adopt the label of feminist if we believe in its egalitarian type concepts, the dictionary definition of that. But of course, that is only step one. Step two would be to reject all of the people and make public declarations that they are not feminists if they seek to do things that are outside of the scope of the basic equality of the sexes. But I think it would take a real public push and a campaign of people adopting the label feminist publicly for this to have any traction at all. And I think it may in the end help illuminate the fact that the people who declare themselves as feminists and then use the dictionary definition of feminism are doing so as a bit of a sophist trick in order to pull more people into the fold. Now, I don't know if this is done intentionally and they think that they're going to indoctrinate them later, or if it's just a vain attempt, the vanity of the ideological position to get more people, more proponents. Now, obviously, I think this whole idea could be expanded upon quite a bit. And I think it would be very easy to take the platforms of the modern ideological feminists and put them through the lens or the filter of the dictionary definition and see if there's consistency there. And if they're not, then obviously we could reject them as anti-feminist or unfeminist notions. And keep in mind, I'm not suggesting for a moment that we shouldn't be vigilant about discrimination that exists, but of course, fortunately in the West, we have equality under the law. So there are laws and mechanisms in place to protect people. And of course, if we find areas of discrimination, for instance, if we do actually find an instance where a woman is being paid less than a man strictly based on gender and not work experience, hours worked, commitment to the job, test scores, who knows what else, then that should be prosecuted, clearly. But I think that the real feminists are actually the people who all adopt the label egalitarian if we're going to use the dictionary, the pure dictionary definition of the word. I think that we ought to wear it loud and proud. It's just a label after all. It's just a word. What really is important are the actions. And it's the other ones, the ideological feminists, who are problematic. Let me know what you think. Thanks for watching.